Hello and welcome to today's dialogue. And I want to start off by talking about some magic moments, some synchronicities. And so the first story happened yesterday. Yesterday I went to Dollarama in order to buy a couple things, including a Mother's Day card. And I was walking around the store looking for also some tabs that I use to mark places in books that I'm reading. And I noticed a man, and he was with a woman. They were shopping, and he was kind of looking at me. I looked at him, but I just continued on my way to get my items. And then when I went up to the checkout, he and whoever he was with was at the checkout ahead of me, and they were packing up their stuff from the counter, and the Dollarama cashier moved over to the next counter and asked me to come and place my items down. So I did that. I kind of hesitated a moment because I didn't want to just sort of barge in front of them. And she scanned my items, came to $8 and something. And then I noticed all of a sudden a $10 bill landed on the counter in front of me. And I didn't quite hear what the man said. I didn't look back. I thought he was giving the cashier a tip. But he said to pay for my items. And so I looked over and he was just walking out the door and at the moment, and he gave me a peace sign. And I said, thank you. I don't even know if I had time to say thank you. I'm pretty sure I did. And so she gave me my change. Actually, I think it was $7 and something. She gave me my change, and then I walked out, and he was still there in the parking lot. So I waved, and I said, thank you. And gave him a peace sign. And then I noticed on my receipt, this is kind of a side story, but I noticed on my receipt that the cashier only scanned 2 out of the 3 book highlighting tabs that I got. And so, I went back in to pay for the third one with the change that I'd gotten, because it'd be kind of ridiculous to have someone pay for my order and then a missed item be scanned, and then I get more change than I'm entitled to, and I keep that, right? That's kind of erasing the good deed. It's erasing the good karma. So basically, I was surprised and not surprised, because I don't think that particular thing has ever happened to me, except maybe once or twice in a drive-thru for coffee. But this was very much a blatant act of kindness. And the way the man was looking at me, he was looking at me to scope out if he could do an act of kindness, perhaps. And funny enough, I was wearing my tank top that has a picture of the cosmos, and there's a quote that says, I have your back, universe, or I got you, universe. And it's a quote from the universe. And I love that tank top, and I was even thinking, I'm never going to retire this. Or after the random act of kindness, I decided I'm going to wear this thing till it falls off of me. But before that, I was thinking, it's getting a little bit, a little faded. But I wore it on the first day that was really tank top weather anyway. So maybe that would have played into it too, because he might have read my tank top. And the other thing is, if I was to do this as like a news flash, I'd be like, breaking news, man commits random act of kindness. He was 6'2". He was wearing a dark hoodie. He had dark skin. He might have been half of indigenous or some other descent. I'm not very good with descents. I'm sorry. And he had a little bit of maybe old scarring on his cheeks. And, clean shaven, blah, blah, I don't know. Driving a black Audi. He was driving a nice car when I went outside. So it was definitely you can't judge the book by its cover moment. Especially, being a woman. And not only that, at times I watch a lot of true crime. and it's not nice scenarios, right? And then here I was experiencing a random act of kindness from a complete stranger who, didn't look like, say, your typical CEO. Like, I don't think your typical CEO would necessarily be in Dollarama. So anyways, just saying, it was a beautiful moment. And the reason I'm not fully surprised is because I do feel there are lots of beautiful moments out there, and I'm just very grateful to have experienced one. And I feel like it's helpful because in the last month I have had a lower amount of energy, and when I have a lower amount of energy, I watch a lot of true crime, and there's just some really bad ones out there. So I sense this as closure to my true crime watching more than usual. Sometimes I don't watch it at all, and then when I have no energy and I can't think, I can't use the computer, all this stuff, I end up watching some true crime. And so anyways, I'm just saying, there are beautiful moments out there, and it was like the season opener of the beautiful moments. And that was yesterday. Not only that, yesterday I found out about the solar storms that are happening because of the solar storms, the aurora borealis, or the northern lights. I didn't actually see them. I haven't seen them. And what's interesting, though, is I have a story around this one as well. So this is how it goes. A little while ago, I want to say a couple months ago, I calculated something. I calculated the time it would take for sound to travel to the sun. And I saw on a Reddit post it would take 13 years, 10 months, approximately. And so I calculated that time from an event that happened to me that, wasn't the best. I'll just put it that way. And counted forward 13 years and 10 months because I was curious if the sun could hear sound, which I looked it up and it can't because sound doesn't go through. But I wasn't thinking that way at the time. I just learned that today. I should have known. Anyway, when would the sun hear that happen to me? The speed of light is one thing, but if something happens inside, you'd think a little trickle of the sound would get through to the sun. I'm going to pretend in my universe with my physics that sound can get to the sun. At least some kind of theoretical version of the sound or some hypothetical version. And so I calculated that it would be around May 25th. Now, I gave myself a 2-week window to give myself a heads up that it would be May 25th. And so that day that I gave the heads up, I put in my iCal, I put, this day the sun will know, blah, blah, and it will send a response. And that was yesterday, which was May 11th. And now, what's interesting is the solar storm started May 10th, and they were expecting it on May 12th. So it's really strange that I put in my calendar on the 11th, which is the day in between those 2 days, like the average, that the sun would know and it would send a response. Now, what's interesting is that when I recalculated 13 years and 10 months today, it's actually July 25th. It's actually July 25th. That would be when the sun heard, not May 25th. So I put the wrong date, but when I put the wrong date in quotes, the sun's response arrived basically right on time from what I said. So to me, it seems like the universe responded to what I said versus the actual calculation, right? Which when you create a subjective reality, extrapolated interpretation of that, it feels like, okay, if I calculate something, it's going to go the way I say rather than, the numerical, perfect, factual calculation. And, that is partly the placebo effect or the stewardship effect or what have you. either way, it's kind of strange that I miscalculated, in quotes. I didn't know until today. And then that's exactly when there's this huge solar storm, when I say the sun's going to send a response. So even if I didn't predict that in the way I was intending to, I still kind of accidentally predicted it. And, that's more like, say, throwing rune stones versus doing the physics type thing. So I just found that really interesting that happened. That the sun sent a response when I said. And to me that's quite powerful. And to me it's a sign of lots. You got to take it in context with previous experiences and building a relationship with Gaia and so many things. It's not something just taken in isolation. And then the other thing that happened today. And, maybe this is the least interesting of the stories. But either way, I was trying to set up a phone for work, an iPhone. And it was locked to somebody else's iCloud, and I could not get it to log in. I called IT. They said they're going to have to get a hold of the phone and fix it so I can set it up. And so they did that, and I just picked up the phone today, and it said, I went to open the phone, and it said, enter your passcode. And I didn't have a passcode. Like, I didn't set it up, right? It's kind of at the same point where I'm locked out, and I'm thinking, I didn't even think. What I did was, I can say the passcode, it doesn't matter. I put the passcode, I automatically typed 112233, and it unlocked. And I was surprised. And then I was setting it up. I was setting up Face ID, and at some point, maybe right before that, it asked me for the passcode, and I thought maybe it would just accept any passcode. So I'm going to try a different passcode because that was a little weird. Like maybe the IT set it up so I could just type in anything and get to the next step. And so I typed in 123456, and it said, this is not right. So, I think it's relatively easy to guess 112233. And maybe he gave me that number when we were trying to troubleshoot, but I don't recall having to put in that type of number. But he might have given it to me. I can't remember, but it just felt so weird and automatic that I put it in right away without thinking either way. I didn't think, well, I don't have a passcode or whatever. Pretty sure it could have been in a step, but I don't know. So anyway, that was another story about kind of the magic. And it's interesting because after a month of having no energy, it just sort of comes back. And that's why I talk about how by doing this sort of work, that's not really work, it's still there when I come back online and I don't lose anything. And that's why I don't agree, at least in my own experience, that having a diagnosis of bipolar disorder means, I'm going to get worse over time and more this, more that, more hospitalizations, which, not everyone would get that, but it's definitely something that is talked about, how there's worsening of cognition over time and everything. And I don't think that's true. I think there can be kind of a lull as I experience it now, which is like less ability to function in all ways. And then when the functioning comes back online, which it's only been maybe a week or even less, all of a sudden there's these synchronicities. All of a sudden there's these magic moments. All of a sudden there's these random acts of kindness. And it's just right there, right where I left off. And that's a different kind of functioning beyond like me and how my brain works. Like this is how reality can work. And that's something that is beyond the personal, right? So there could have been more magic moments, but something that I've been pondering in that regard, and I think listening to Dr. Ian McGilchrist speak, he mentioned at some point about the good, the true, and the beautiful. And I've heard that before. Like, I heard Ken Wilber talk about it years ago. And something, the way he said it, struck me differently this time. I noticed how it's called the good, the true, and the beautiful, not I'm good, I'm true, I'm beautiful, or whatever. It's not, when they're saying the good, it's not necessarily referring to goodness within a human per se. How I heard him share was that it's part of reality. That's the triangle, or the trio, or however you call it, of reality. Like, it's the algorithm of reality that has nothing to do with the way we've mechanized reality through human thought. And when I think about the experiences I've had recently, those are definitely experiences of the good, the true, and the beautiful. And they're within humanity, and they operate through humanity too, but it's part of the fabric of reality. And it would be, I would think, the prevalent operations of reality if we were able to drop the thought process as this really important thing. And that's where listening to a dialogue with J. Krishnamurti, I've been listening to him to fall asleep again, which I used to do when I lived in a noisy neighborhood. And I just started doing that a couple months ago again because people upstairs are a little stompy overhead when I'm trying to sleep. And I tend to go to sleep late enough now that they're usually asleep, but I still will listen to him while I'm falling asleep. And if I can't sleep, I end up listening to more, and then I don't usually end up listening to the end. But the way he was describing the movement of thought, and he was talking about, this is one of his talks, which was 1976 in Saanen, Switzerland, talk number 7. And I think he's talking about being a light to oneself. And he talks about that many times over the years. You have to watch and listen to quite a bit of J. Krishnamurti in order to catch on. I would say it's sort of like listening to country music. When I was in my early 20s, I worked in a lab, and in one of the parts of the lab, they played country music. And it was back in the day when there was commercials and like you couldn't get rid of them or whatever. And their slogan was something like, something about listen to us for a week and you'll like us. Like, who says that, right? But after a while, all of a sudden I liked one song. And then not too long later, I liked a bunch of songs. And then I had a CD burnt. And then I was listening to it in my car, and da-da-da-da-da. It just went on like that. So J. Krishnamurti, as you listen and you start to see what he's saying, and, I've been listening to him for like 15 years. And today and yesterday I was thinking, whoa, I'm really getting something here. But I've had that feeling many, many, many times. So it just kind of goes like deeper and deeper over time, slowly sort of peeling away the layers of thought. And I even had this experience when I first read a book of J. Krishnamurti before he was really on YouTube and everything too much. I read it and I didn't get it at all. And I put it down for a whole year, and then I picked it up again in a year, and then I couldn't put it down. So it's sort of like that. You have to maybe prime your brain. And as much YouTube educational content as I watch in true crime, I'll have it on like anywhere from 1.5 to 2x, like just blasting through it. But with J. Krishnamurti, I always listen on regular speed. And so, even though he doesn't talk particularly fast, it just seems right to really listen as he said it. So, what he was saying something about the movement of thought. Like, thought is a movement from the past to the future, or from the past to the present. And if it keeps going, it becomes the future as the present. But what he's saying is the now is a non-movement. And so when the movement of thought meets a non-movement of the now, then it is quiet. It actually ends. It comes to a stop. This is a different way of approaching it than I approached reducing thoughts. I went through it, or went about it, based on listening to Eckhart Tolle or reading his book, The Power of Now. And by paying attention to the sensations in my body, and then realizing when I was no longer present, because I noticed that my mind was chattering away, I was able to bring myself back to the present moment. Well, that wasn't enough to prevent like mania and psychosis and things that happen in life. So in what Krishnamurti is saying, I'm not sure what I see with that exactly, but I'm seeing now how he talks about like thoughts created this world, thought has created this world. And he talks about in this talk number 7, about how there's no thinker and thought, there's only thinking, this movement of thinking. And then when we think there's a thinker in there, it's another thought in conflict with the movement of thinking, trying to control the thinking. And that wastes energy, and it breeds conflict, basically. And conflict wastes energy. It wastes the energy that we need in order to have energy for pure observation without thinking, including observing thinking, not as a thinker and a thought, or an observer and the observed, but as observation, pure observation, or choiceless awareness, which includes not choosing the thoughts, not trying to be in conflict with them by creating a thought, which we call the observer, which tries to focus the thought or think this and not that, and all this stuff that goes on. So it's too complex to get into now, but I really noticed how so much is the movement of thought, even to the point where when I'm in these times where my mind is quite silent, even with that, I experience mania and psychosis that come on after, say, about 9 months or 8 months or something like that. So it seems that though there's this period of silence, there's like this other time of thought, which is like laying in wait, and it's even like more intense. I don't know if it's because I have a lot of silence in between or why. It's just there. It's just there waiting to jump in and cause a bunch of drama and things. So, again, too much to go into with that. But the other thing that I realized was over the months that these people upstairs have been kind of noisy, I've really not liked it. And at the same time, if they wouldn't have been up there doing that, I probably wouldn't have started listening to Krishnamurti again when I was falling asleep. And then I probably wouldn't be here talking about this right now, right? So even that thing that I thought was not so great is a good thing, because it led me to these insights. And I'm not sure if there was any other magic moments, but for now I think I will leave it at that. And just wondering if you have had any more synchronicities with the Northern Lights happening or anything else. And oh, not only that, yesterday, and I didn't have this in my calendar, yesterday, the day I thought the sun was going to hear and send some kind of something, it was J. Krishnamurti's birthday, and somebody told me that today. So the day I picked that the sun was going to hear was actually J. Krishnamurti's birthday. I didn't realize that. And yeah, so that's some really cool magic that I just love that stuff. It's the best. What do you think?